Hey everybody, Dan Labbe here with Mary Kay Cabot, Doug Lesmerises, Ashley Bastock. We are recording an emergency Baker Mayfield pod. We knew this was coming at some point. We weren't sure when. It happens a few hours before Mary Kay is about to board a plane and leave for London. So, Mary Kay, catching your breath here. I guess your initial reaction, tell us exactly what the trade is, and then just your initial reaction to this trade happening, finally getting done with Baker Mayfield going to the Carolina Panthers for a conditional pick, the Browns paying a pretty good chunk of that salary.
Well, my initial reaction was, I'm glad this wasn't at 8 o'clock tonight when my flight is actually taking off. We've been joking about this for weeks, how we know that Baker and Deshaun were going to happen right away while I was trying to get out across the pond. And so initial reaction was like, oh, I can do this. And so, but anyways, just in terms of the trade, I knew it was coming down. The Browns and the Panthers really had agreed on the parameters of this trade for the most part some weeks ago. And, I had been writing that this is still likely to happen. So at least I hope I did our listeners and our readers a service by trying to steer them down the Panthers road. So this had been going on for a while. What they had to do was come up with the right salary structure, who was going to pay what. I'm sure that had a lot to do with Baker trimming $3.5 million off of his base salary to get this thing done. But he has an opportunity to make that back in incentives. So he should probably be able to do that because he's going to be their starting quarterback. I mean, he is going to be their starting quarterback. He's better than Sam Darnold. Now, just in terms of this ends all these months of speculation that perhaps Baker Mayfield is going to come in here, bust open more beer coolers, start in place of Deshaun Watson for the year. That was never going to happen. Okay. That wasn't going to happen. We tried to manage expectations that way too. But I think a lot of people hoped against hope that he would somehow end up saving the season for the Cleveland Browns. So this puts the end of that speculation. And at his youth football camp, when he said both sides want to part ways, everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people heard him say, oh, there would have to be some reaching out. They forgot the part about both sides are done. Both sides were done the minute the Browns went to visit Deshaun Watson. And that was basically it. Baker was done at that point, and it was over.
Doug, I don't need to remind you that we did pod after pod after pod talking about a potential Baker Mayfield extension last offseason. It was something that at the very least, whether you thought they should do it or shouldn't do it, was at least a discussion. So now the Baker Mayfield era is over. I mean, what's your sort of initial reaction here? I mean, knowing that this was coming, right? It's sort of weird to talk about. We knew this was going to happen eventually, but now it's happened.
And I think maybe now it allows everybody to sort of move on, but also embrace the past, right? That he was an important figure for the Browns. If they go on and do something great in the next couple of years, he will have played some kind of role in helping this team transition and helping this franchise sort of change who they were. And it got ugly at the end, but I don't know that that's what everybody will remember first about the Baker Mayfield era, right? That I think they'll remember when he came in against the Jets. And I think they'll remember, how good he looked in the second half of the first year with Kevin Stefanski and that kind of thing. And that I think in the end, people will have some pretty good feelings about this. And I also think this is going to be interesting for Browns fans. I think you can be a fan of the Browns and be a fan of Baker Mayfield because I think he's going to be pretty good at times in Carolina, just like he was here. Will he lead Carolina or any team he leads in the future to a Super Bowl, which is what the Browns are trying to do? I would say maybe not, but will he be a competent top half of the league starting quarterback? Maybe a top 12 starting quarterback? Quite possibly. So I do think fans are going to sort of have to prepare themselves, but I think this has been so angst-ridden. It's sort of nice that this part is over. And, I think it seems like Andrew Berry, saved a little bit in the cap and at least got a pick and, it's not terrible. So I think this is almost like it's the difference of this is not a funeral for Baker Mayfield's career in Cleveland. Now it's a celebration of life for Baker Mayfield's career in Cleveland, right? And it didn't last as long as you thought it would, but there are things to celebrate about his time here. And maybe now that it's over, that's what people can think about instead of this angst of the past, 12 months or whatever it's been.
Ashley, that Jets game feels like it was a decade ago.
I know. I can't even I'm like, wait, when was that again? Like, I feel like I was in my youth then. And no, it was only like a couple of years ago, right? But I mean, everything that Doug's saying is kind of right on the money, right? I mean, we've been saying for a long time, like maybe Baker Mayfield's not the guy, but maybe he was the transitional guy. And maybe he's a part of this story of the Browns getting back on track and getting to a Super Bowl finally after all these years, but maybe he's just not the main character, and that's okay. Like, you need really interesting side characters in journeys like this, and maybe that's Baker Mayfield. And I do think, we've talked about like maybe the pendulum swung too far in the opposite direction with people's feelings on Baker Mayfield and thinking he's not good or whatever the case may be. But I do think, it's a recency bias of how things ended. I think there's so much that he did for this team. And yes, opening the coolers was a long time ago compared to that Steelers game where we're seeing 5 or 6 passes getting batted down and him getting sacked 9 times. But that is still as much a part of his story as this, the last handful of games he played with the shoulder. And I think he got deserved criticism for those games, right? But sometimes it did feel like the pendulum swung too far in the opposite direction. And maybe it's okay that he's not the guy to get it done for the Browns because he was the one who started that journey maybe at the end of the day.